when I was applying, initially I wasn't getting callbacks because my resume wasn't, very good. So I worked on my resume and I was getting invited for interviews. And when I would get to the interview stage, I would just fail my interviews. I would get rejections and stuff. So I had to go for the mock interview sessions to try and, improve and optimize my interviewing skills, because interviewing is a skill and it's built by practicing. So, and I think another important one that I shouldn't forget is being able to quantify the impact of whatever work you've done. So if you're a data scientist and you build a model, you want to be able to explain on your resume that, oh, I built this model to classify this, and this was the result of what, the model I built did. It's not just important for you to use all the latest technologies or deep learning here. It's not only important to use all those technologies. You also want them to understand, okay, what's the impact, especially business impact, or at least technological impact. Maybe you reduce technical debt in some way, or you increase revenue, or you increase user engagement or retention on the platform. You want to be able to show a quantified, when I say quantified, I mean like number, 20%, extra 20 people, extra 200 people, 5 minutes, less time, to load a page. So you want to be able to also quantify the impact of the work you've done.
So yeah, thank you, Aniekan, for giving your time for this podcast. So yeah, you are currently you're just studying as well as doing like internship in Microsoft. So yeah, I know you're too busy, but yeah, thank you for your time for this podcast. And I hope you can just share your views. Yeah, I hope you can just share your views. And for the freshers who just want to get into the data science field, so I hope you'll just add some value through this podcast. So yeah, can you just introduce yourself for the audience? And yeah.
Okay. My name is Aniekan. I'm from Nigeria. I'm currently doing my master's in computer science at the University of Denver, Colorado, in the United States. And just recently, this month, I began my data science internship, summer internship with Microsoft in Washington. I have a blog where I write articles about tech, data, career, life, grad school. Yeah, that's basically it. I think that's a basic introduction about me. Yeah, so I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you for also making out time, to speak with me and have me share my.
Pleasure having you, Aniekan. So yeah, we'll just talk about that blog and what you're just sharing in.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll just talk about a bit later. So yeah, just can you just share what's your previous background before you just doing masters? What you just done, where you just worked. So yeah, that background was. So can you just share that?
Okay. So I have my undergrad in computer science as well. I schooled at the University of Uyo, which is a public university in Nigeria. After that, I worked as a data scientist at 2 startups in Lagos, Nigeria as well, where I lived. One of them being DEMS Analytics and the other being Steers. So I worked as a data scientist for 3 years with these 2 startups, one after the other. And I thought I wanted something different, something new, more challenges and stuff. And I decided that grad school was the next step for me. And I started the whole application to grad school. And last September, I began my master's at the University of Denver.
Yeah, really great. So can you just talk about the work that you just done previously in the 2 internships that you just done? So what kind of roles that is? Is it related to data science or not?
Actually, there were not internships actually, there were full-time roles, and it was data science role. So the first one was more about natural language processing, text analysis, recommendation systems, which I really enjoyed. And I love that field so much. I most likely would still be working in the field, like natural language processing and recommendation systems. So I worked there for like 18 months, and then I wanted something different. So I took the offer with Steers. At Steers, I joined as a data journalist, but then I transitioned to being a data scientist. And I was working on the product team, using data about the product to drive business decisions and help improve the product as a whole. So a lot of data analysis was involved there. SQL, presentations, dashboards, presentations to management, it was very product facing, and I had a lot of stakeholders and management I had to, work with. So I really enjoyed that role, and I was there for 18 months as well before I went to grad school.
Yeah, that's really great. And so what's like, I just seen that, just hear that you're just recently into Microsoft, right? You just got an internship at Microsoft as a data science intern.
Yes.
So what's that complete process? What's that journey? Can you just share that?
Okay, sure. So I got to grad school in September 2021, but I started applying for summer internships around November, end of November 2021. So I had to brush up on data structures and algorithms, my personal projects, machine learning theory, and things like that. So for Microsoft, I sent in my application either December or January. I had someone refer me for the roles. I was actually referred to 3 roles, but I interviewed for one and I scaled through, and the others were just withdrawn since I had scaled through with one of them. I had my first round of interview in January, and it was a technical interview. So a 30 minutes technical video virtual interview. And after that, I head back after a few weeks and had my final round of interviews in February. So it was 4 interviews in that round, covering personal projects I had done, my CV, my resume, statistics and probability, SQL, machine learning theory and applications, as well as behavioral interview. Then I think I got my offer 2 weeks after. So that was the journey for me for Microsoft.
Yeah, that's really great. And so happy for you for that role at Microsoft.
Thank you.
So definitely preparing for such kind of interview, especially data science interview, where a lot of things, right? Like right from SQL, statistics, right from machine learning algorithms, the tools like data visualization tools. So there are a lot of things, right? So how you just manage that interview preparation?
To be honest, it was a lot, because I was going to school. I mean, I had to study and I was working. I work on campus as a graduate teaching assistant. So I also had to carry out my responsibilities for that role. But what I did was first speak to people that, work in these roles and have interviewed recently, just to gauge how the market is, like what's happening, what are they asking nowadays, and what should I make sure I know and study. Then I compiled a study note, divided it into the different areas, as you mentioned. So there's like EDA, which is exploratory data analysis, being able to do some EDA with Python or R, if that's the language you use. Modeling, building models, evaluating models like machine learning models, ML theory as well, overfitting, regularization, things like that, statistics and probability, as well as programming. So my technical interview is like lead code kind of question. So you want to also practice that and make sure, you have a good understanding of data structures and algorithms and when to apply them and the limitations. Then being able to also talk about the work you've done, if you have work experience. And if you don't have work experience, maybe from class projects or personal projects, being able to talk about what you've done, the skills you picked up from those projects, why you chose what. So I compiled that into a study note and I was just going over it. I also had like mock interviews. So I reached out to like some people in my network to have mock interviews with me, which is basically simulating the interview experience with somebody, that is maybe more knowledgeable or more advanced in your field. One I really recommend is like the mock interview sessions with Udwak. Is what I did like sessions with him and it was so helpful. For the study notes, I know it can sometimes sound overwhelming. I mean, you've heard me say EDA, you've heard me say, the data structures and algorithms, you've heard me say machine learning theory. Yeah. So I also like put together the study notes I used, at least the major, sections you want to cover and some sample questions. And I also published that on my blog. So, hopefully that kind of helps because it was a lot. But once you get a good overview of everything you need to know, I think it makes it easier for you.
Yeah, that's really great, Aniekan. So I will just link that blog right below this video. So if you just want to go, like the people who are just watching this video, you can just go through that blog. So what are the resources that you just used while just preparing for the interview? What are for example, let's say for programming, you just mentioned lead code. And for
Yeah.
similarly for other resources, like let's say preparing for machine learning interviews or let's say statistics. So what kind of resources that you just used?
Okay. So for data structures and algorithms, I got a course on Udemy, a Python data structures and algorithms course, and it was very helpful to me. It broke it down in very layman terms, and I think I was able to understand complexity, time complexity, space complexity, and things like that. So I used the course to study, and then I started practicing on Lit code, and it was a continuous, practice process. Then for machine learning, I use Kaggle. So Kaggle Learn, they have like courses on different, topics. I use that as like a crash course to just brush up on, what I currently know. I also use Strata Scratch. So Strata Scratch is like a code, like it has sample problems and you can solve them. But they also have like data science problems and SQL queries where you can run those. So I use that as well. And some other blog posts, articles, or sample questions that people had also posted online. I linked that in my study notes as well, because I can't remember some right now, but I can remember IntelliPath, and there are just some other sites that have the sample questions. So I use that to also brush up, to make sure that, I'm not missing out something. I'm able to correctly explain maybe the definition of something or when you would use one model over the other.
Yeah, that's really great, Aniken. So some other resources, and I will just try to link as many as possible in the description below as well, like what you just mentioned, that's
I think if you can link the study notes, I also linked that additional resources.
Yeah.
So everybody can see everything I use.
I will do that. And what's your role at Microsoft? So you just joined as an intern. So what you just currently doing at Microsoft? So it's there are a lot of products. They are just building some amazing things. So what's your work there?
Okay, so I joined as a data scientist intern, and I'm on the Bing search team. I mentioned, I have previous experience with like natural language processing and recommendation systems, which I also enjoy. So, Bing search, there's lots of text analysis there as well. So I'm interning there as a data scientist intern.
Yeah, that's great. So there may be there are a lot of rejections when you're just applying for different kind of jobs. So how you just handle that? So it would be great if you can just share that journey as well to us. It would be great even if the audience were just watching here, they can just relate it. And it's a long process for like to get a job, to get an internship. So yeah, it would be help if you can share that experience as well.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So I started applying for roles and everything end of November, and I didn't get my offer until middle of March. So that's a little bit over about 4 months, or 3 months ish. And it wasn't easy. So I would get to final rounds of interviews for like some companies, and these interviews are so stressful. Some of them 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours back to back. You're speaking, you're explaining yourself, you want to be coherent, you want to answer the questions properly, and it can be very draining. And then after going through, that's very stressful experience, sometimes you get a rejection mail. There were lots of days that I was so sad. I would cry. I would be so down. And I think it's okay. I mean, we're humans and we have emotions. If you put in so much effort, your time, your resources, your knowledge, your brain to try to get this offer or this internship or this job, whatever thing you're applying for, and it doesn't come through, as you expect, it's totally okay to feel sad. I mean, it's okay to feel disappointed. It's okay for you to feel frustrated. I would advise that, you allow yourself feel the way you feel. Don't try to, brush it off or bottle it up and say, I shouldn't feel that way, or I have to keep going. It's okay for you to process the emotions you feel. And you can even take some time off to, just feel sad or get yourself together or encourage yourself. Also, take advantage or use the privilege of people around you. Having a good support system is very, very helpful. It could be your friends, it could be your family, it could be your colleagues, it could be people on the internet that just, talk to you and check in on you or care about you. So if you have people that you can fall back on or just cry to them or talk to them or ask them to cheer you up, please speak to them. Sometimes we may feel like, oh, we are failures because we are getting these rejections and we don't want to open up to people, and we start pushing people away or trying to, just protect them from feeling the way we feel, feeling the hurt we feel as well. But I don't think it's good for either of us in the long run. So if you have people around you, fall back on them, let them support you, let them hold you. I normally tell my friends that sometimes it's a marathon, not a sprint. So if you know how you run a marathon, as opposed to a sprint where you're trying to run very fast and finish in the shortest time, sometimes a marathon, you just have to pace yourself so that you maintain your energy and your strength. So you don't give up. You can take breaks, like you can start walking or jogging as opposed to sprinting. But the important thing is you don't stop and you don't fall out of the race. So that's what I always say, is a marathon, not a sprint. For some people, it could be a sprint. That is, you can start applying today, you can get an offer next week. I'm so happy for you. That's amazing. But sometimes it doesn't happen that way and it takes some months. So you want to pace yourself, avoid burnout, you can take breaks, but please don't quit. I think that's all I have to say about that. But I totally understand it's not easy. And if you're in that situation right now, I really empathize with you. And I hope that, something good comes through for you soon.
Yeah, that's really, really awesome. And again, so you just shared your journeys. That's really great. And apart from that technical part, you just shared some of the things that you just want to prepare mentally when you're just applying for the interview. Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah. Ask for feedback as well. Again, I spoke about the mock interviews because when I was applying, initially I wasn't getting callbacks because my resume wasn't, very good. So I worked on my resume and I was getting invited for interviews. And when I would get to the interview stage, I would just fail my interviews. I would get rejections and stuff. So I had to go for the mock interview sessions to try and, improve and optimize my interviewing skills. Because interviewing is a skill and it's built by practicing. Some people are so good at this thing, they know everything in the world, but they are just not able to effectively communicate it to the interviewer the way the interviewer wants to receive it. So this is something mock interviews can, help you build that skill, know what you should improve on, know what you're not doing so well. So yeah, asking for feedback and, iterating on that is also something you can do.
Yeah, that's really great. And how much time that you just took to prepare for your interview, Aniekan, data science interview?
Because I had just moved to a new country to start school. I was settling into the educational system, which is kind of different from what I was used to. I didn't have like block of time. It was 4 months. I just focused on preparing for interviews. I had to, be managing other like school and preparing. So I started like end of November 2021, taking these courses and practicing lead code on the side. And I also started like putting in some applications and reaching out to people for referrals. Then that was January. Then December, I also did that. I started getting some take-home challenges in December, which I was working on, still doing my lead code to improve that and reading on the ML theory. So it was a continuous rolling process of like 4 months. I didn't have a bulk time, like 5 months, 6 months, or even 2 months where I just sat down to prepare for interviews. It was like an agile, methodology where as I'm preparing, I'm applying, as I'm failing and I'm getting feedback and trying to improve on that until I got like the offers I liked.
Yeah, that's really great. And what's the, like you just started preparing for the interview and also you just share that like you just want to like apply for the interview, apply for the role. You just want to learn from that. You just want to reapply that. You just want to improve from that. So and also I just remember the point that you just mentioned in that bit of space, that point which really struck me. So for example, let's say you're just applying for an interview, applying for a role. So you just got rejected. So since your resume is not good, you are not like you're just getting rejected. So just work on your resume, like build projects or let's say like ask feedback from others. So just build your resume and just apply for the next step. So you're just rejecting at the second step, like for example, let's say any programming interview. So then you just take time, just prepare for the programming interview and the next step. So that's really an important point. I just want to share to the audience who are just watching this video. And yeah, that's really great. And
thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah. And also like can you just share some of the resume tips that you just followed, like let's say projects that you just done?
Okay.
Everything that.
Yeah. Okay. So one resume tip is quite simple, but it's very helpful. Please have your resume on your LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is a very, important professional platform. And sometimes recruiters, stumble on it. So if they can see your resume as a media file on your profile, it's easier to look at everything together as opposed to scrolling through your entire LinkedIn to see your experience, your education, your projects, and things like that. Then on the resume itself, try to keep it as short as possible, because especially if humans are looking at it, we have very, very limited time and low attention span. So try to keep it at least one, like maybe one page if you have maybe less than or equals to 3 to 5 years of work experience. Where if you have more, obviously it may spill into like 2 pages because you've worked on more projects and just had more roles that are important for the role. Yeah. Another thing is not everything has to be on your resume. So on your resume, you want to highlight, your experience, your education, your projects that are most relevant or most important to that role, that specific role you are applying to. If you've been a lawyer before and then you transition to banking and finance and then you transition to software engineering, it may not be very relevant for a software engineering role you're applying to, except it's at a fintech and you think, okay, my finance background could help me be a better fintech software engineer. So only put experiences, education, and projects that you think are most relevant to the role you are applying to, just so that things that are important actually fit. Then I had my GitHub link at the top of my resume. So right after my name, you see my GitHub link. For those that may not know, GitHub is a platform where you can create projects and repositories and push your code to that. It's open source and you can set the projects to public or private. If they are public, anyone that visits that page can see the code, the work you've done, the code you've worked on. And if you have a very good README, they can really understand what you're trying to do with that project. Even download it, like clone it to their system and try to run it locally to see if it works. So I had my GitHub link, right under my name. Then I had like my portfolio link as well as my LinkedIn. So you want the most important things, that the recruiters or the hiring managers should see. You want to highlight those. I think those are the major, and if you have personal projects, please put them. I put just one personal project on my resume because again, I was trying to take advantage of as much space as I should. So having my GitHub and my portfolio at the top of the thing, like you can see more of my projects, but I put just one. And I think another important one that I shouldn't forget is being able to quantify the impact of whatever work you've done. So if you're a data scientist and you build a model, you want to be able to explain on your resume that, oh, I built this model to classify this, and this was the result of what, the model I built did. It's not just important for you to use all the latest technologies or deep learning here. It's not only important to use all those technologies. You also want them to understand, okay, what's the impact, especially business impact, or at least technological impact. Maybe you reduce technical debt in some way, or you increase revenue, or you increase user engagement or retention on the platform. You want to be able to show a quantified, when I say quantified, I mean like number, 20%, extra 20 people, extra 200 people, 5 minutes, less time, to load a page. So you want to be able to also quantify the impact of the work you've done.
Yeah, that's really, really, really important points that you just mentioned, Aniekan. Thank you for mentioning that.
You're welcome.
And also, what are some the projects that you just done when it comes to data science? So definitely, it's quite overwhelming to do a lot of projects, to build a lot of things. But even I used to say to my, for one who was just asking me, instead of having 10 normal projects, it would be great if we can have one project which has an impact on the impact, which is helping someone, which is solving some issue. So what's your take on that?
Yes, I agree. So I have just one major project. I mean, that's not the best. If you can have more, kudos to you. And it's a tweet classification problem. So, and I try to make it end to end, although I haven't pushed it to production. So, from collecting the data, cleaning the data, text analysis, trying out different models, giving reasons why I think this model performed over the other, evaluating the models. I also trained the neural network as well. And I wrote a blog post about it. So trying to walk through the entire data science process, from defining the problem I want to solve, getting the data, wrangling the data, to do some EDA visualizations, building models and explaining why I'm choosing certain models over the other. evaluating performance of these models, as well as presenting my findings and making recommendations. So I had that one big project. Then I had like smaller projects, Python projects, scripts here and there that do some things. So I think if you're like, data science is broad, and it's okay if you don't know what you really want to do. There's the NLP version side, there's the computer vision. There are people that are more into like time series and forecasting and all those things. So if you see the area you're interested in, try to build one big project that walks through the entire data science, timeline, and be able to represent this thing to people. It's not just writing code. Maybe write a good documentation that goes ahead with the code, comment it properly, use the right coding, best practices. Yeah, that's what I think. You don't have to build 10 projects that are not solving anything just to say, okay, I use this model, I use this, I use that. If you have the skills, that's amazing, that's nice. But what is most important is, okay, these skills that you have, how did you apply it? Why did you apply to this problem? Yeah. And what was the impact? So I agree with you.
Yeah, that's really important. And thank you for agreeing that. And also, what's the final remarks that you just want to say for this podcast? And can I just done with the questions? And also, I will just ask the questions that most of the users have commented on the thread that I just mentioned you on that Twitter. So yeah, I just covered all the things.
Everyone that asks. Yeah.
So any closing remarks that you just want to share with the folks who are just passionate to learn data science, who just want to get into that?
Yeah.
Anything regarding that?
Okay, I think data science is very interesting. If that's something you think you want to do, it's amazing. But it being amazing doesn't mean it's very easy. It can be challenging sometimes. But if you have your personal, motivation, your why are you doing this? Why do you want to be a data scientist? Even when things are not going, exactly how you plan, or there are some obstacles or challenges along the way, it would, help you to stay on track, because someday, you will get what you're looking for. And if you're like applying to things, maybe grad school, full-time jobs, internships, and it's looking a bit bleak, or you're getting rejections, I'm really sorry about, how you feel, and I hope you get something soon. If you can get feedback and try to, improve in different areas, and hopefully it's able to bring back positive results sometime. I'm also like grateful to you, Sumant, for having me on your podcast, for reaching out to me, for inviting me and asking me these questions, and giving me another opportunity to share my story with, a wider audience. I appreciate your time as well. If anybody has any questions that are not answered on my blog, because I tend to write about, tech, career, data, grad school, life generally. So if you go to the blog and you see an article, and you've not seen an article that answers your questions, or you have some recommendations, you can send me an email, contact aniekan@gmail.com, or just write a comment on the blog, and hopefully I get to write in something that could answer your questions.
Yeah, I will just link all the things that all the profiles, all the socials in the description, Aniekan. So it's a pleasure having you in my podcast. It's really a value-added session. You just shared your experiences. Definitely, it will help someone who are just willing to learn data science, or let's say getting into like transition into data science. We are just preparing for the interviews. So I hope this is a value-added session. And I really thank you for this podcast, and thank you for your time, Aniekan. And yeah, we'll hope to see you soon. Yeah.
Yes.